Hi there, welcome to the Future of Fitness podcast with me, Alice Bowmaker. And on today's podcast, we have Mea Rose, who is an Ayurveda practitioner as well as a therapist. And as a yoga practitioner myself, I'm really interested in learning more about Ayurveda. And I think it's kind of heard and people talk about it a little bit, but it's not often understood what it actually means and how to use it in your everyday life. And obviously, Ayurveda is another kind of ancient practice that perhaps we could learn from. And so I thought it would be really useful to share the information today on the podcast. So we're blending ancient and modern practices together. So thank you, Mea, for joining us today. It's
Hello.
lovely to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're most welcome. And I'm sure you have so much to share with us. So it's gonna be interesting. So I guess if we started with how you came to find Ayurveda, what drew you in that direction as opposed to other health and healing practices?
I randomly came across Ayurveda. I was living by the south coast about 8 years ago and went to a yoga festival that had a stall that was selling Ayurvedic blend tea bags. And I got speaking to the lady that was there, and she was an Ayurvedic doctor. And I remember her saying to me, "Oh, you can apply Ayurveda to anything." And at the time, I had sciatica, which I'd had for about 18 months, and I tried lots of different things and nothing worked. So I had it's like a nutrition and a lifestyle assessment, like a consultation with her. And it was probably the first time I've ever really felt seen and heard in what seemingly was like a medical appointment or a health-based appointment. It was not just about my symptoms, but about my personality and, my patterns and my habits. So in some ways, it felt quite transformational at that stage in my life. And we used some of the tools of Ayurveda. I wanted to learn more of this ancient wisdom that really I didn't know much about, and decided to train in it myself, not just for when I was out of balance, but also as a lifestyle and to be able to share that with others. And I trained in the UK, and the training was adapted for the West and Western lifestyle and Western conditions. So, and now it's a pleasure to be able to share that with other people and to work as an Ayurvedic practitioner.
And so that's interesting. So how long does it take to train to be an Ayurvedic practitioner?
So I did it part-time over about 3.5 years.
Wow.
So I managed to still maintain the other work that I was doing. And as a talking therapist as well, the skills are very helpful within Ayurveda because it does incorporate emotional well-being and mental health as well. It's holistic. So it's nice to be able to work holistically with people.
Yeah. And what the training involved then? What's the kind of areas that you look at in a training for it?
So with the diploma, we learned about the history, so the theory, but also practical. We had patients that we would see. So clients would come in with different imbalances and disorders, and looking at how the treatment protocols, which are personalized, can really help someone come back into balance. So the training was a mix of theory, practice, application, also for myself. So I was having treatment from a doctor myself. So it was really invaluable to be receiving treatment and also practicing at the same time.
Yeah.
For me, it feels like it was a big part of my own healing journey, that process of training.
Yeah. Yeah. And if someone say came to you with like a condition and they wanted you to help them, what's the kind of the first thing you would like go through with them in terms of trying to work out how to help them? Do you have like a protocol of like a consultation or?
Yeah, so the initial assessment, which is like a lifestyle and nutrition consultation, but it looks at much more than just the medical history and the symptoms. It looks at lifestyle, so, you know, sleep, the impact someone's job might have, relationships, support network, emotional well-being, mental health, you know, even things like body temperature, skin temperature, like skin type, hair type, everything, as well as like taste buds and palate. So it's really comprehensive and holistic. It's like an overview of the person.
It's amazing. It's like you said, it's being fully seen, you know, in your complexity and understood is amazing, isn't it? In terms of just another statistic or someone trying to put a bandage on it without seeing what's causing the problem. So what would you say, I guess, if we were to look at the kind of the history of Ayurveda, where does it come from? Do you know? I
So
hope so.
it's the oldest ancient healing medical system. So it originated from India 5,000 years ago. So it's holistic. It incorporates mind, body, and spirit. It incorporates cyclical living, seasonal living, connection to nature, connection to the body. There are elements of intuitive eating, because what we consume, not just food, it impacts how we feel, like our energy levels, our mood. So it kind of goes back to simplistic living, the things that are in line with nature, and what we can you know, be connected to our bodies and know the right things to fuel ourselves with.
That definitely resonates with me, and it may, I guess, to some people, Ayurveda may look very complex, but I guess it is, and we are complex as well. And there's not just one solution that fixes everything, is there? There's just, I guess, like if you're working with someone, a few different things that you need to do to help them and to come back into balance. And that it sounds like a lot of Ayurveda is all about finding balance again
Mm.
and
Yeah,
looking at imbalances.
yeah, coming back into homeostasis. So
Yeah.
it uses the 5 elements, so air, ether, fire, water, and earth. And there are 3. The Sanskrit word is dosha, but it means a constitution, like a body
Mm-hmm.
type. And Vata is the one that's made up predominantly of air and ether. Pitta is fire and water, and Kapha is water and earth.
Mm-hmm.
So we're a mix of all of them, but we will be predominantly 1 or 2. So, for example, I'm Pitta Kapha, but I could have a Vata imbalance. So when people are doing quizzes to find their dosha online, they're probably filling it out with their imbalance and their symptoms. So it might not be accurate. So it's always good to see a practitioner for a personalized service, because not 2 Vatas will be the same. Everyone's different. So any protocol is unique to the person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I guess so that to me that sounds like there's a kind of it uses nature as a template. And we fall into that kind of template, and we're made up of more bits than others, and that makes our kind of personality and our temperament and our how we move through life and what illnesses we're more likely to get or what injuries we're more likely to get, how we sleep, our relationships, are all affected by these kind of components that we're made up of, right? And it's all to do with the elements.
So any dosha can be imbalanced, but it could be a different dosha that's
Okay.
imbalanced. So the dosha can be balanced or imbalanced, and it's linked to different things as well. So the seasons, the time of the day, there's even related colours, life stages. So for example, now we're in October. In the UK, it's autumn here, so that's the Vata season. So anyone that's either imbalanced with Vata or trying to keep in balance their Vata, it would be a time to have to keep warm and to have heavier grounding foods, because Vatas can be very light and airy, and if it's imbalanced, quite scatty. So actually being grounded is what will help balance that. And then late winter to spring is the Kapha season. So Kappas can feel quite sluggish or slow and heavy or quite sedentary. So for that season to balance that, eating lighter foods, lighter properties, lighter qualities, and also movement. So it's the opposite that balances the quality, if that makes sense. So summer is Pitta, so Pitta is fire and water, so a lot of heat. So, people might feel quite hot-headed in the summer. So the cooling and sweeter properties will balance Pitta. So it's knowing the body type, learning about the person, their personality, whether they're imbalanced, and also remaining in balance. So yeah, there's a lot of learning and awareness, and then I suppose the embodying it and implementing it as a lifestyle to prevent any imbalance.
Yes, because it's like a preventative thing rather than treating the illness. You're doing it beforehand so that everything. And that's the difference, I think, between medicine, some types of medicine, which is just treating the kind of the symptom, which is necessary. And if you break your leg, obviously that's necessary to treat that symptom. But I think it's really important. This is where the blending of the old and new is important, because we need modern medicine, of course, but there's so much wisdom in the ancient practices, and they were very healthy, and there's a reason that it is carried on for so long, which is interesting.
Yeah. Prevention is always better than cure. As a lifestyle, but where there's imbalances, Ayurveda, I found in my experience, has been really helpful with like any ailments. And also when I experienced burnout, using Ayurveda as a tool really helped me kind of get back into alignment and flow a lot quicker than it would have been if I hadn't have been using the protocols of what I'd been doing. But also the life change that came from that. I realized I was living in like a very yang masculine energy, very busy, overdoing, and I was always exhausted. So since that, I've actually learned to live a slower pace of life, relaxing more whilst still being productive. But that huge lifestyle change for me has actually been quite transformational, like learning about myself and then using it when there's been difficult times in life, has really supported me in coming back into homeostasis and balance.
What specific things did you do when you would say you had burnout? What were the practices if someone was to do it? Not if someone was to do it, but what did you do just for interest to help yourself to come back into balance?
So I did see an Ayurvedic doctor myself. So I was taking herbal medicine. I was adjusting my diet to make sure I could come back into balance, spending time in nature. Massages can be used, or self massages, even meditation. That lots of tools can be brought in to balance the person, and it's personalized for them. And yeah, it's I use it as and when I need it, but now also as a lifestyle.
Yeah, like a framework, I guess, to help you stay healthy and imbalanced. I use that with my cycle, my menstrual cycle. That's my, I guess, guiding compass, and that's my cyclical form, I guess, of making sure I'm staying in balance, that I'm not just in my yang masculine energy, but there's some yin, but equally that I'm not just staying in the yin energy, which is kind of more sedentary and cool and emotive and stuff, which is important, but we don't want to stay in it all the time. So I allow myself to like flip between the two, and like really make the most of each part of the cycle, and take on the strength of that part of the cycle. So it sounds to me like Ayurveda is similar, and I hadn't actually thought of Ayurveda in in that way as well? Is like a kind of a framework that you kind of you don't just do it once and then you're healed. It's like a dance. You're always kind of floating around and coming in and out of balance, aren't you? You're never going to stay imbalanced forever.
So yeah, we can go in and out of balance, especially say with the seasons. And also I think so Ayurveda really helped me connect to my cycle and really honor it. And my connection to my body really increased through it, because there are elements of intuitive eating in it where it's listening to the body and knowing the right things to feed it. So there is, the cyclical element, but also the seasonal, the seasons in nature as well are really important with it. And just the connection to nature, how healing being in nature can be even for a short amount of time.
Yeah. And I think like the seasons aren't here by accident, and there is that healing element to them. And I do think there is we need the seasons because we can't stay in summer all the time. I mean, actually in some countries it is quite hot all the time. But I guess the seasons are a really helpful way of not getting to burnout, I find, because or even the cycle as well, because you're going through that period of high energy and then dropping back and going inwards, and it's that more feminine approach as well.
It can guide our lifestyle. Like
Yes.
with the winter, kind of nesting a bit more, and
Yeah.
we
Did you find your relationship to food changed as well when you were more intuitive and cyclical? Because I know mine definitely did. I'd stopped needing to go on any type of diet because I was naturally allowing myself to eat a little bit more if I needed to, but I could really feel in my body when I can stop eating without forcing myself to stop eat, and I'll naturally eat a little bit less sometimes, so that my weight kind of stays the same, and it's not so much of a struggle as it was when I was younger and trying to stay the same all the time.
Yeah, I can really connect with how the food feels now. And so I've learned that actually things don't always feel good, even though I might have thought I enjoyed eating them. So that intuitive element has definitely come in. And also there are 5 tastes in Ayurveda, so astringent, bitter, pungent, sweet, sour, and salty. So learning about all of that and how that impacts our taste buds and which ones are good for each dosha. So all of that has really, helped me see things very differently, but in a good way, because I feel much more imbalanced now than before I discovered Ayurveda.
Yeah, I kind of learned about all the different taste buds, and then so when I make meals, I do try to incorporate as many of them as I can, the different tastes, because I've heard that it helps you to feel more satisfied with your meal. Whereas when we have something that's, say, just like popcorn, which is kind of just salty, because it's lower in nutrients and it's kind of more of a boring taste, that's just one taste, we keep wanting more and more because it's not really satisfying us.
It's called a tridoshic meal. So if we've got all the tastes in there, it will meet the needs of all the doshas. So that's a really good thing to do.
I didn't know that. See, I love this. Is exactly why I wanted to have this conversation because I'm learning so much. Wow. Okay. So what I feel like I'm understanding more from Ayurveda is that we should embrace or be aware of all the doshas rather than being like, oh, I'm a Pitta, Kapha, or I'm a Vata. Just be aware that it's in all of us.
And there are different life stages. So
Right. Yes. This is
yeah.
another thing that I am very interested in is the life stages.
Yes, so younger people up to about 16, it's the Kapha stage. Adulthood up to 50 is Pitta, and then after 50 is Vata. And just knowing things like time of the day as well. So between 10 and 2, 10 in the morning and 2 during the afternoon is Pitta time. So that's when digestion is the strongest because Pitta transforms. So that's a good time to eat the bigger meal. So, and knowing what time to exercise, which would be the Kapha time. So this it can be applied to everything. There's so much there. And even if anyone's looking for love or a partner, they can choose someone based on their constitution and, you know, the associated personality. So it can be applied to most things.
Wow. Oh my God, I feel like I need to ask you to do that one for me. So I have two questions. I hope I can remember them. The first one is, do you find that people who are moving between the two life stages, like say you're moving from Kappa to, is it Pitta? Yeah. Do you find there's a little bit of a turmoil when we're in that moment of changing from one to the other?
There could be, but not necessarily.
Okay.
So if we think of like perimenopause,
Mm-hmm.
that could be the crossover between Pitta and Vata. It can be manageable, the
Yeah.
symptoms, just by being in balance and knowing how to balance that life stage.
Mm.
That is possible.
Is That's interesting because I've always thought that like the struggle does come when we don't embrace the stage of life we're at.
Mm.
So from my perspective, I would say I'm in the pitta stage, and from a cyclical perspective, it's the full moon stage, it's the summer stage, it's when life is fuller and there's a lot, not fuller, but it's busier. There's a lot going on. And whether people choose to have children and things like that, they've got their kids, they've got their job, which is kind of their moved up as slightly with that maybe is feeling a bit busier. And so I like to say to some of my clients, like, yes, this is busier, but it's not forever. So it's just this period of time that you have. Because if you have kids and a job, you can't necessarily do less. You can make it slightly less busy, but there's an element of life being, there's a lot going on, if that makes sense. And then I find sometimes if women, and I haven't got to that stage, so I can only experience from, let's say, from my observations, if we keep trying to stay in that really busy period from like earlier in life, that's when a lot of the body pain and the symptoms come because we are not embracing that call to slow down and I would say that's moving into more autumn and the waning moon and stuff, because we're still in fast forwards.
Yeah, all of that's really relevant with, you know, how everyone feels. Like most people say they want to live a life that feels good. And Ayurveda is a toolkit that I've been able to use that's actually promoted that, like making lifestyle changes, but also day to day. Because yeah, most people will say they're busy or stressed or overwhelmed, and you know that can be part of the human experience. But it's just knowing the right tools, coming back into balance can be a lot simpler and quicker from my experience.
Yeah, yeah. And another thing was that I guess listening to all of this, it sounds like there's so much to think about. There's the time of day, there's the season, there's the time of life. And I think in case anybody is kind of like, oh, this is going to be too much, I guess it makes me think of when, say, I'm teaching a client and I'm teaching them to do a movement which is quite complex. Now, when I first teach you how to do it, it's going to sound like I'm asking you to do a lot because I'm saying pull your shoulders back, tuck your chin in, breathe out, engage your abs. And a lot, first of all, that does sound like quite a lot, but after a while, that will become habitual. So I
Mm.
won't even need to tell you to pull your shoulders back, engage your core, do that, because your body or you will habitually, it'll be in the back of the mind running there. And so I'll just be telling you to squeeze your glutes and breathe. But everything else is happening automatically. So I guess when you start Ayurveda, you might think there's so much to think about, but after a time it will become automatic in a way of life. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think working with a practitioner helps that all kind of make sense, like learning about oneself, and then small, simple stages like, a bit of nutrition advice, some maybe herbs, even kitchen herbs, like starting small with can have big shifts from my experience. So yeah, like step by step, because after the consultation, it's usually minimum of 3 months of allowing the body to like absorb the herbs and for all the benefits to come. So there is like a bit of that treatment protocol, and having the reviews with the practitioner will help know if anything needs tweaking, or if anything's not working, or adapting it, adjusting it to the person. So having that support um,
Mm,
makes it easier, because I know it might not
yeah.
all make sense, like if someone doesn't know much about Ayurveda,
Yeah.
but it is quite simple. It's just knowing that, like when working with someone, it all kind of, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. And I think also there's like, so I might for myself be like, oh, I need this supplement. And then because I'm just doing it with myself, by myself, experimenting with stuff, maybe I wouldn't give it the full 3 months of just like following a protocol strictly to see if it works or not. I'll just like try it for a week and be like, oh, this doesn't really work, and kind of stop using it. And I think having somebody else who knows how to use herbs and can kind of look at you from an external perspective, and also will kind of keep you on track for 3 months, is really helpful to kind of give you more structure to it and help you to see things through, rather than trying for a week and then being like, oh, this doesn't work.
Yeah, and it's an act of self-care to
Yeah.
take that time out for the self and really think about how people are nourishing and nurturing their bodies.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. I always think that, and I think we have so many decisions to make every single day. And I do think we have a certain amount of decision making and brain power per day, and then it runs out. That's why people tend to fall off their diet at night, because you've lost the ability to decide to make a healthy option. But having somebody else to make those decisions for you as well is really helpful in terms of Ayurveda. Um, because it's another decision that's kind of been taken away from you, and I'm like putting myself into your hands, and allowing you to just like hold space for me for a little bit so that I can go and do my other things in everyday life.
Mm. Yeah, and I think it's important to say what it's not. And it's not a diet, it's not a fad,
Yes.
it's ancient wisdom that really honors the body. And that's why it is so personalized and not generic. Yeah.
Yes, that's such a good point to put across. Um, what would you say? So this is just kind of like a question that I ask a few people that come on the podcast. Not everyone, because I don't always remember. But what is do you have a daily or like weekly kind of practice that you follow that you think is uh is relevant to help you stay kind of sane in this modern world, but keeps you connected to ancient wisdom?
So do you mean like Ayurveda?
Ayurveda, or your general kind of through your years as being, interested in wellness and stuff. Is there anything that you, just as a personal interest, you like have in your everyday life that you think is helpful?
Yeah, so when I wake up, so the first thing I do is probably use a tongue scraper. So
Wow.
that's in case there are any toxins that have accumulated from the night. I meditate, so even if it's just for a short amount of time, and then I would definitely do some kind of writing, whether it's journaling or creative writing, either in the morning or the evening. I would always try and spend time in nature, even if it was a short walk per day. So they're probably the basics that I would do, and just really honor the seasons. Like now we are in autumn, and we'll be going into winter, and adjusting to that, because the light is different, you know, the time of day that we go out, and just really try and live by that. So like the rhythm, the seasons of my body, but also the seasons of nature.
Yeah.
Finding that.
And do you have a kind of like you eat certain types of food in autumn? Is there any foods that you would recommend for autumn?
So for any Vata imbalance or balancing the Vata, it would be warming foods that are heavier in texture, because Vatas can be quite light and airy, so they would need something heavy, warming to be grounded. And just kind of keeping warm. So
is that somebody with like more Vata in there? And is it also somebody who has a Vata imbalance?
So if someone had a Vata imbalance, they would need a personalized service to them. It's never generic, because all Vatas are different, but generally speaking, the opposite would balance it. So if someone's quite airy or scatty, because there's a balanced and an imbalanced. So an imbalanced Vata could be quite airy and scatty, but balanced, they could be very creative and innovative. So to balance the airiness, it would be like heavy, grounding, warming foods, and keeping warm, because the elements of wind and movement can be a lot for Vata. So I would eat for my constitution and any imbalance that I had, depending on what it was, if that makes sense. I don't want to get too technical, because it might be confusing. But basically, for any imbalance, eating for that, and then when in balance, just eating for the constitution of the person, in line with the season, if that makes any sense.
Yes, yeah. Is there how would you test for imbalances? Is there any indications? Is it visual or?
So it's mainly symptoms that we go off. There can be things like looking at the tongue to see if there are any like toxins on the tongue, and pulses. But symptoms usually. So digestion is the core of Ayurveda, and balancing that. So people will usually come with symptoms, and that could be linked to digestion, because most of immunity does come from digestion. They'll come with symptoms probably around digestion, the gut, and maybe other things, so like skin conditions, could be emotional well-being, things like stress. So it could be an accumulation of all of them, but the assessment would then unpick all of that, the symptoms, how long they've been there, what caused them, what was the trigger, and kind of come up with a protocol after that consultation.
Amazing. And I feel like I need to have a consultation with you now. It would be so interesting, because I looked at it a while ago, but I haven't looked much further into Ayurveda, so it'll be interesting to see what's going on. And what you recommend. And it's what I think is really interesting is to see what you're doing in everyday life that you think deemed to be healthy because society says it is, or whether that be going to a really intense exercise class, or fasting, or drinking coffee, or whatever. You think it's really healthy for you, but actually it sounds like if you had a tailorized consultation, you might be finding that some of these things are actually not helpful for you. They might be helpful for some people, but not everyone. I'm just having somebody else to kind of observe you from the outside and give you that second pair of eyes to see what's going on. And I find the same with personal training and yoga. I'm taking into account, okay, this person has come to me really stressed at the moment, so probably a really high intensity workout is not going to be the best thing, because that's very yang, and then that's that adrenaline rush. So probably what we need is the opposite, which is something slower and softer, connecting to the body to balance that yin and yang. But if somebody is in the space of feeling very stressed and on edge, that they might be naturally kind of drawn more to a high intensity class because it's feeding that adrenaline thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and learning that actually it's the opposite that balances
Mm,
it, um
yeah.
the a lifestyle change. But then seeing the progress as how the person feels. So when I
Hmm.
made changes initially, I knew that actually I felt better.
Mm,
So it was easy to continue that because now I could eat something and know the texture and the properties of it and how the effect that has on the body.
yeah.
So it does become, yeah, more natural and habitual.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot to learn, and it's really important to have that knowledge of Ayurveda. And having the knowledge helps you to make better decisions rather than kind of just looking at it from doing, like I say, a questionnaire and just kind of going from a generic point of view. It's worth doing the research and learning and going to see a practitioner, to understand things inside out, and yeah, have that depth of knowledge behind it.
Yeah, it can be, well, my experience, it's been such an invaluable tool that, I still use, and, I adapt it when I need it for any imbalances I have, or for life stages. But yeah, it really has for me felt transformational in many ways. And I never thought it would be, because, I just thought it was just food and herbs, but actually it's so much more than that. It's bringing people back into unity and consciousness.
That's so beautiful. Um, okay, so if I finish with one last question, I guess, is what is your what is your next step, I guess, with what you're offering? How can people find you as well if they're looking to have a consultation?
So at the minute, I'm doing one-to-one work. So I offer the lifestyle consultations that includes the nutrition, herbal medicine advice, lifestyle advice. So yeah, and I offer complimentary discovery calls as well. If anyone's got any questions specific to them or want to learn a bit more, um, yeah, and so my website is mearose.co.uk. Um, yeah, so that's probably the easiest way to reach out. So that's the main bit at the minute. In the future, I'll probably like to do more workshops, but yeah, at the minute it's predominantly one-to-one work.
And can you do this online as well as in person?
Yeah, so at the minute I work online, and it's completely the same. It doesn't make any difference if it was in person. So yeah, at the minute online.
Amazing. Oh, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom. And I definitely want to book a consultation with you after hearing all of that.
You.
I hope you enjoyed your first podcast.
Yes, thanks.
And you felt welcomed and comfortable, because there is so much to know about this type of stuff. It's
Yeah.
important. It's important to share the information. So thank you everybody for listening. Thank you, Mea, for joining us. And I will put the information below of how you can contact her if you would like that free discovery call, or just go straight in and book a lifestyle one-to-one with her. And I will see you at the next one. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. Speak
Bye.
soon.